Russian President Vladimir Putin hands a bouquet of flowers to Alina Kabaeva, former Olympic gymnast and world champion in 2001. Persistent rumors over the years claim she is his longtime mistress and the mother of several of his children, a relationship the Kremlin has never officially confirmed. After 42 years working as an obstetric nurse at the same hospital where she started, this woman finally retires with immense gratitude. She shares a side-by-side photo from early in her career in 1979 and one from the present, documenting a life entirely devoted to caring for newborns. A man desperately tries to protect his family from cannibals during the devastating Madras famine of 1877. Under British colonial rule in India, the humanitarian catastrophe, made worse by the Victorian government's indifferent colonial policies, resulted in millions of deaths and extreme cases of violence. A photo taken around 1970 catches an uncle casually growing marijuana right in his own backyard. The man's completely unbothered expression and the quiet domestic setting create a humorous contrast with the gravity of the situation. Probably a family story that nobody ever quite forgot. An Auschwitz concentration camp survivor tenderly holds her great-granddaughter in her arms in a deeply moving intergenerational portrait. The image bridges generations separated by the horror of the Holocaust. The woman who survived humanity's worst, and the child who represents her legacy. A deaf father presses a large speaker tightly against his chest to feel the music's vibrations in the early 1970s. Unable to hear, he found this unique and deeply personal way to connect with art. An intimate gesture showing how the musical experience can transcend the act of hearing itself. Otto Frank, Anne Frank's father, revisits in 1960 the attic entrance in the Amsterdam building where he and his family hid for more than 2 years during the Nazi occupation. 15 years after the war ended, he returns to the place that would become one of the most visited symbols of Holocaust memory. A 1950 photograph shows a proud mother standing alongside her 8 children, every one of whom served in the U.S. Armed Forces during World War II or the Korean War. And all of them came home safe and sound. An extraordinarily rare testament to luck, faith, and resilience in times of war. The author's mother used her lunch break from work to attend her daughter's kindergarten graduation, simple and smiling. The photo was shared as a lighthearted response to the viral trend of bikini moms on Reddit, a tribute to a more everyday and entirely genuine kind of motherly love. Uncle Billy just turned 90, and his family celebrates by sharing this archival photo from the early 1980s, showing him next to his favorite boat. The image captures a man in his element, with the serenity and pride of someone who lived a full life connected to the water and to freedom. Otto Frank, Anne Frank's father, revisits in 1960 the narrow entrance to the secret annex in Amsterdam, where his family hid for 2 years and 2 months from Nazi persecution. The hiding place was transformed into the Anne Frank House, one of the most visited and emotionally powerful sites of Holocaust memory. A 1967 photo shows the post's author up front in the group, still young, posing with members of his father's band, his father visible in the background on the left. The image captures a nostalgic moment of connection across generations, set to live music and the vibrant aesthetic of the 1960s. A historic and controversial photo taken around 1933 shows the young Princess Elizabeth, future Queen of England, appearing to perform a Nazi salute while playing with relatives in the garden at Balmoral, Scotland. Buckingham Palace publicly acknowledged the authenticity of the image in 2015. A newlywed couple proudly poses for a formal photo in San Juan de los Lagos, in the state of Jalisco, Mexico, in 1940. Their elegant attire and the careful composition of the image reflect the solemnity placed on marriage in one of the country's most religious cities, a portrait of faith and tradition. The author's grandmother was a white Jewish woman who, strangely enough, looked a lot like Barack Obama in photos from 1962. The surprising and humorous comparison went viral on Reddit, where users were amazed by the unexpected resemblance between two people so distant in time and context. In 1910, two 13-year-old boys came down with smallpox at the same time. The one who had been vaccinated as a child developed only mild scabs that disappeared quickly. The unvaccinated one was severely disfigured. The image became one of the most powerful visual arguments for vaccination in history. A friend asked the post's author to share this personal photo from the mid-1980s. The image shows a young man with the style and aesthetic typical of the era. Hair, clothes, and attitude that perfectly capture the laid-back and irreverent spirit of a generation that grew up during the Reagan years. A striking comparative photograph shows the same person or members of the same family, separated by 80 years of history. The contrast between the young and the old provokes deep reflection on time, change, and the continuity that runs across generations, two faces of one and the same life. The author's father appears at the front of a group of soldiers in Vietnam in 1971. The photo turned up completely by chance on the internet decades later, a discovery that moved both the son and the father to tears the first time they saw it together. A mix of total surprise and deep longing. The author's mother appears in this photo from around 1983, radiating a natural style and presence that, with some humor, explains why her daughter would be the most boring person of all. Mom apparently kept all the family's looks and personality for herself, including, it seems, the bicycle. Pat Tillman was an NFL player who walked away from a multi-million-dollar career to serve in the Army after 9/11. Opposed to extending the war into Iraq, he was killed in 2004 in a friendly fire incident in Afghanistan. The Army tried to cover up the cause of his death, but the truth eventually came out. In 1995, Nicole van den Hurk, just 15 years old, was murdered while biking to work in Eindhoven, the Netherlands. The case went unsolved for decades until her adoptive brother confessed to the crime in 2016 after being deported from Brazil, where he had been living, bringing a long search for justice to a close. A comparative photograph shows the same person or couple at two moments, separated by exactly 38 years. Same pose, same location or object, but with decades of life etched into their faces. The simple, understated image carries the quiet and inevitable weight of time passing and transforming everything. Queen Jenapul, the last queen of Mongolia, photographed in 1920 with elegance and solemnity. Born in 1905, she became the wife of the last Mongolian Khan and a symbol of an era coming to an end with the Communist Revolution. In 1938, she was executed during Stalin's purges and became a national martyr. A 102-year-old man still drives the same Rolls-Royce he bought in 1928, 82 years later, at the time of the photo. The car and its owner have aged together, and the image of both still running is a remarkable testament to both British engineering and human determination and vitality across time. The author lost her eye to cancer when she was just 5 years old. This photo, taken in 1998, shows her first day being photographed at school. A portrait full of quiet courage and a wide, genuine smile from a child who faced illness so young and still moved forward into life without hesitation. George Clooney, at just 7 years old, in a family photo taken in 1968. Long before becoming one of Hollywood's most charming actors, young George appears alongside his family with a curious smile, and absolutely no hint that this face would be captivating audiences around the world decades later. A 1950 photograph shows a mother surrounded by all 8 of her children, every one of whom served in the American Armed Forces during World War II or the Korean War, and all of whom came home alive. A rare portrait of a family that defied the long odds of war and came through it whole. In 1981, Marianne Bachmeier smuggled a Beretta pistol into a German courtroom and fatally shot her 7-year-old daughter's killer during his own trial. The act, witnessed by the jury and the public, shocked the world and ignited a fierce and lasting debate about justice and revenge. The Great North Dakota Blizzard of 1966 was one of the worst weather disasters in state history, with fierce winds and massive snow accumulation that isolated entire communities for several days. Images of buried homes show the devastating force of winter storms across the Great Plains. Terry Crews and his classmate were voted in their 1986 yearbook in Flint, Michigan, as most likely to succeed. Their classmate's prediction turned out to be dead on. Terry went on to become a professional NFL player, a Hollywood actor, and a globally recognized TV host with an impressive career. A woman from Hiroshima displays her back, where skin was burned in 1945 in the precise floral pattern of the kimono she was wearing at the moment the atomic bomb exploded. The image, with its overwhelming visual cruelty, became one of the most haunting testimonies to the destructive power of nuclear weapons. A series of photographs of Abraham Lincoln taken over just 4 years shows the president apparently aging a full decade. The crushing weight of the Civil War, with its hundreds of thousands of deaths, visibly transformed the man who carried the fate of the entire nation on his shoulders. Lonnie Johnson, NASA engineer and inventor, poses around the early 1980s with the project that would make him world famous. The Super Soaker, the pressurized water gun that became one of the best-selling toys of all time, racking up well over $1 billion in global sales worldwide. Isaac and Rosa, 2 enslaved children put up for sale in New Orleans around 1863, just before abolition. The photo was taken by abolitionist photographers who documented the brutal reality of slavery in order to sway public opinion in the North during the final years of the Civil War. A young woman poses with charm and ease for her boyfriend after coming home from prom in 1970. The elegant dress, styled hair, and confident smile capture the lightness and happiness of a moment that would be held onto for decades as one of the most cherished memories of her teenage years. The last photo taken of Princess Diana alongside Prince William was captured in August 1997, just weeks before the princess's tragic death in a car accident in Paris on August 31st. The image has taken on a special and melancholy dimension as time has passed and history has weighed in. Muhammad Ali, at 24, casually flirts with Belinda Boyd, just 16, at a Chicago bakery in 1966. A year later, the two would marry in a simple ceremony, a rare and charming portrait of the world champion in a completely human moment, totally relaxed and in love, far from any boxing ring. When Albert Einstein met Charlie Chaplin in 1931, Einstein said, "What I admire most about your art is its universality. You don't say a word, and yet the world understands you." Chaplin replied with humor, "You are more famous than I am. Nobody understands you." A historic meeting of 2 geniuses. The author's father lovingly raised a pet duck from an egg in 1994, and the animal became a devoted and deeply loved companion to the whole family. The photo shows the two with a touching intimacy, revealing the profound and unusual bond that can form between a man and the creature he raised. A photo taken in Thousand Drive at Donald Trump's mansion captures the moment he married his third wife, Melania Knauss, in a lavish ceremony. The image shows the couple in an environment of ostentatious wealth that foreshadows the style and personality that would come to define his future American presidency. A 1991 school photo in Alabama shows the author busting through a paper wall on a skateboard, missing its back wheel, sporting a haircut some might call a mullet. The image, shared years later with a good laugh, perfectly captures the irreverence of American student culture in the 90s. A group of Palestinian women enjoy coffee at their leisure in Jerusalem between 1910 and 1920 during the Ottoman period. The relaxed, everyday scene offers a rare and humanizing glimpse into what life was like for women in Palestine at the turn of the 20th century, a world few can imagine today. A controversial and historic photo, taken around 1933, shows young Princess Elizabeth, future Queen of England, giving what appears to be a Nazi salute while playing with relatives in the garden at Balmoral, Scotland. Buckingham Palace confirmed the image's authenticity to the Sun newspaper in 2015. Christopher Chaplin is the son of legendary actor and filmmaker Charlie Chaplin, who fathered him at 73. At the time of this photo, Christopher was already 62, making it even more mind-bending to realize that if his father were still alive, he'd be 135. A lineage that completely defies any normal sense of time. Wernher von Braun, German-born aerospace engineer and chief architect of the American space program, poses in 1965 in his NASA office, surrounded by scale models of every rocket he ever designed, from the Nazi V-2 bomb to the Saturn V that would carry men to the moon 4 years later. A 1989 photo shows the author and his friends before attending the Straight Outta Compton tour, the actual NWA tour, not the movie. The image captures the excitement of young rap fans about to witness live one of the most groundbreaking and subversive moments in American hip-hop history. Josef Mengele, the Nazi doctor known as the Angel of Death, conducted barbaric experiments on prisoners at Auschwitz during World War II. After 1945, he fled to South America and was never caught, dying by drowning in Brazil in 1979 without ever facing justice or standing trial for his crimes. The author's grandfather lights a cigarette in a creative self-portrait made using double exposure in the 1950s, resulting in an ethereal image that blends two moments into a single frame. The analog technique required patience and skill from the amateur photographer to pull off the intended effect. A striking comparative photograph shows the same person at two moments, separated by exactly 66 years. The same pose or setting, but with decades of life, history, and physical transformation between them. A quiet and beautiful meditation on the inexorable flow of time and what it holds on to and carries away. Two Somali women, elegantly dressed in modern Western clothing, enjoy a drink at a bar in Mogadishu in 1968, before the widespread adoption of the hijab. The image shows a cosmopolitan and relaxed Somalia that very few people anywhere in today's world have any chance of imagining or knowing. In 1995, a devoted father did everything he could to make his daughter's second birthday special, during a period when the two of them were living on their own. With limited resources but plenty of love, he created a moment that would be remembered forever. Proof that presence and care mean far more than presence. Eartha Kitt visits Australia with her young daughter in 1963 and tries to convince her there's nothing to be scared of with the kangaroo they're both looking at up close. The light-hearted scene shows the American singer and actress trying to pass on courage and curiosity to her child in the face of such a strange, unfamiliar animal. A young Barack Obama, dressed as a pirate, poses next to his mother, Stanley Ann Dunham, in a photo from the 1960s. The casual and affectionate image of one of America's future presidents in a Halloween costume is both charming and historically curious for anyone who knows what the future holds. A couple poses for a formal photo in San Juan de los Lagos, Jalisco, Mexico, in 1940. The careful composition of the image, with both in elegant attire, reflects the importance and solemnity placed on marriage in one of the country's most religious cities. An intimate portrait of faith and tradition. A fun comparative photograph places the father in 1984 and the son in 2018 at the same historic site, the ruins of Chichén Itzá in Mexico. Decades separate the two images, but the pose and angle are deliberately similar, a gesture of affection and nostalgia, connecting two generations to the same landscape. Twira Kayapo, an activist from the Kayapo people, thrust her machete right in the face of a Brazilian government official during an assembly about the Cararaó hydroelectric dam in Pará in 1989. The bold and intimidating gesture became a global icon of indigenous resistance against deforestation. Francesca Mann arrived at Auschwitz in 1943. When ordered to undress, she did so in a seductive manner to distract the guards, grabbed one of their weapons, and fought back ferociously until she was killed. Her story became a powerful symbol of dignity, courage, and human resistance under extreme oppression. A sign displayed on February 8, 1977 read, "War is not hell, war is war, and hell is hell, and of the two, war is worse." The quote, popularized by the TV series Mais H, became one of the most widely shared and enduring anti-war slogans in all of 20th century American popular culture. Amanda America Dixon was born from the relationship between a 13-year-old enslaved woman and her 40-year-old master in Georgia. Despite her brutal origins, she became one of Georgia's wealthiest women after the Civil War, inheriting her father's fortune in a landmark and deeply controversial court ruling. A comparative image shows revolutionary Ernesto Che Guevara with exactly 10 years between the two photos, young and open on one side, hardened by guerrilla warfare on the other. A visual portrait of the physical and ideological transformation of one of the 20th century's most controversial icons. The author's physics teacher retires after 3 decades in the classroom, and she pays tribute by sharing a photo from his very first day of work. The comparison between the young teacher full of expectations and the retiree closing out a long career is both deeply moving and genuinely inspiring. An 18-year-old Russian woman, completely emaciated, stares directly into the camera during the liberation of Dachau concentration camp in 1945. Her vacant gaze and skeletal body tell without words the horror she survived, one of the most powerful images from the final days of World War II. Italian explorer Attilio Gatti poses in 1930 in the Belgian Congo alongside 2 pygmy men hired as guides and a live gorilla he captured during the expedition. The image reflects the colonial values of the time, far removed from the ethics that govern scientific research and wildlife conservation today. The father and son in the 1990s couldn't afford a camera of their own, so they would periodically visit an automatic photo booth to capture moments together. The strips of black and white photos became a unique and completely irreplaceable emotional archive of a duo bound together by life. Dan Bullock was the youngest American soldier to die in Vietnam. At just 14 years old, he enlisted in the Marine Corps in September 1968 by falsifying his documents. He died in June 1969, before turning 15, a tragedy that exposed serious and troubling flaws in the military enlistment process. The shiny black dress Princess Diana wore to a gala in 1994 became known as the revenge dress. She deliberately chose it for the night. Prince Charles publicly admitted to having cheated on her with Camilla, a silent and unforgettable act of self-assertion, elegance, and personal power. Omar bin Laden, Osama bin Laden's fourth oldest son, built a life completely opposite to his father's. He is a visual artist and writer. His work has been shown in galleries in France, where he lived until 2023, and he has become an outspoken critic of the terrorism and violence that defined his family. A woman photographed in the 1950s projects a style, attitude, and way of presenting herself that seemed far ahead of the era's conservatism. Whether through her clothes, her pose, or her confident and independent expression, she was anticipating decades of cultural change that most people around her couldn't yet imagine. A member of the Harlem Hellfighters, the legendary all-black 369th Infantry Regiment, poses for the camera during World War I, holding a puppy he rescued on the battlefield. The image humanizes the soldiers who fought with extraordinary bravery for a country that still didn't treat them as equals. In 1910, two 13-year-old boys contracted smallpox at the same time. The vaccinated one developed only mild marks that faded quickly. The unvaccinated one was left severely disfigured for life. The photo became one of the most powerful visual arguments in favor of vaccination in all of history. The author's grandfather worked as a park ranger at Yellowstone when in 1969, he took the opportunity of the famous Three Stooges, Larry, Moe, and Curly Joe, visiting to get a photo with them inside the park. The rare snapshot blends American entertainment history with a cherished and unique family memory. Sabrina Chibichi, a Kenyan athlete, won a 10K race in 1973 barefoot and in a dress with no athletic gear of any kind. The stunning victory drew worldwide attention and became a lasting symbol of raw African talent that literally overcame every material and structural barrier standing in its path. Audrey Munson, considered America's first supermodel in the early 20th century, lived a tragic life. After being idolized as a muse by sculptors and artists, she attempted suicide at 30. She survived, but spent the following 65 years committed to a psychiatric institution until her death in 1996. The Undertaker, the legendary WWE wrestler, poses with his grandmother in an intimate photo from the 1990s. In sharp contrast to the dark, supernatural image his character projects in the ring, the warm and homey photo reveals the human and affectionate side of the man behind the imposing persona. On Christmas night in 1988, the father finally beat Super Mario Bros. After many failed attempts. The Nintendo had been given as a Christmas gift to his daughter and sister, but the one who ended up glued to the TV was Dad. The image of him celebrating the win after the kids went to bed is unforgettable. Dr. John Britton holds up the .357 Magnum revolver he carried for his own protection while working at an abortion clinic in Pensacola, Florida. The photo, taken shortly before his death, turned tragically prophetic. He was shot and killed by an anti-abortion extremist in July of 1994. The author's mother appears in a photo from the 1970s alongside a young Arnold Schwarzenegger before he became world famous as an actor and bodybuilding champion. The casual encounter between the two, captured naturally and with a lot of charm, became one of the family's most treasured memories. A shepherd from the small village of Karakechdi in Soviet Azerbaijan poses proudly alongside his children in a photo from the 1980s. The simple and direct image captures everyday rural life and the deep family traditions of a little-known community living quietly under the weight of the Soviet regime. The author's mother appears in this photograph taken in 1991, carrying all the aesthetic and spirit of the early 90s, from hair and fashion to her gaze and attitude toward the camera. A personal and affectionate memory shared warmly on social media many years later as a tribute to time gone by. Fred Trump and his son Donald posed together in a photo taken in New York in 1970, when the future president was still a young executive learning the real estate business alongside his father. The image captures the two in a moment of familiarity before the worldwide fame, the politics, and the constant controversy. Phil Collins, in a photo from the 1970s, looks, according to viral comments online, exactly like the kind of indie hip-hop artist who would be topping the charts in 2018. The humorous observation highlighted how styles repeat in cycles, separated by decades, but curiously, unmistakably similar. Eddie Murphy appears smiling and sharply dressed at the premiere of Purple Rain in 1984, the musical film that introduced Prince to mainstream American audiences. The comedian's presence at the event captures two icons of black pop culture in the 1980s, sharing the same space on a historic and celebratory night. A widely circulated photo appears to show a young woman massaging Bill Clinton's shoulders. The image was linked to Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking network and fueled investigations and controversies surrounding the ties between powerful figures and the billionaire convicted of exploiting minors. The author's father arrived in New York for the first time in 1986, a young immigrant full of hope in a city living through the chaotic and creative peak of the 80s. The photo captures the young man fresh off the boat, the start of a new life, far from home, with everything still to be built and earned. The only known authentic photograph of the first-class swimming pool aboard the RMS Titanic was taken in 1912, before the ship sank. The image shows an empty space of impressive luxury, now submerged more than 12,000 feet below the surface of the North Atlantic, a visual ghost of history. President Bill Clinton and Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat appear together at the inauguration of the Gaza International Airport in Rafah in 1999. The project was a symbol of the hopes carried by the Oslo Accords, hopes that would dissolve in the years that followed as conflict in the region intensified. The only known photograph of a black Union Army soldier seated with his family, taken around 1864 during the American Civil War. It is a rare and remarkable historical document that humanizes the experience of the approximately 180,000 black men who fought on the Union side in the war. In 1989, a devoted mother sits beside her son to help him get through a tough level in Super Mario Land on the newly released Game Boy. The photo captures a moment of domestic togetherness that resonates with any 80s kid who ever asked for help getting past a tricky video game level. Pat Tillman was an NFL star who gave up a multi-million-dollar career to serve in the Army after 9/11. Critical of the war in Iraq, he died in 2004 in a friendly fire incident in Afghanistan. The case was covered up by the U.S. government, but the truth ultimately and fully came to light. Hamburg's oldest house, built in 1524, was photographed in 1888, still standing and in pristine condition after more than 3 centuries. Ironically, it was demolished in December 1910, not by war or disaster, but by a city decision, despite protests from residents who wanted to preserve the historic landmark. The young man appears in a 1966 photo, at just 19 years old during his service in Vietnam. Decades later, when he posted the image, he joked that he was passing himself off as a younger version of himself, a humorous way of acknowledging the gap that time opens between who we are and who we once were. A steelworker poses at full height during the construction of the Columbia Tower in Seattle in 1984. With minimal safety equipment and a dizzying view of the city far below, the image captures the everyday courage of the men who physically built one of the most iconic skyscrapers in the American Northwest. The author's grandfather just turned 90, and she celebrates by sharing this photo from the 1950s, showing him young and incredibly stylish. Looking like a total catch, as she put it. The image reveals a handsome and confident man in his prime, before the decades that would come and everything time would change. Adolf Eichmann, the Nazi official responsible for the logistics of the extermination of millions of Jews across Europe, walks through the courtyard of Ramla prison in Israel in 1961, awaiting his historic trial. Captured by Mossad in Argentina in 1960, he was convicted and executed in May 1962. Uncle R and his partner M posed together in the mid-1980s, likely at a time when being openly gay was far more dangerous than it is today. The photo, shared by his nephew with genuine affection on social media, is a gesture of belated and sincere pride for the family they always quietly represented. This is the robe and axe that belonged to Giovanni Bugatti, the official executioner of the Papal States from 1796 to Aix d'Or. Over nearly 70 years of service, he was responsible for approximately 516 executions, making him one of the longest-serving and most prolific professional executioners in recorded European history. The author's mother always claimed she was an editor at Tiger Beat magazine in the 1960s and spent time with the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. Her daughter shared the story with a laugh, along with what was probably photographic proof to show the world she had a far more fascinating mother than anyone suspected. A photo taken around 1963 shows two young people or a couple who clearly had something extraordinary: talent, charisma, nerve, or some combination, even though no one around them believed it at the time. What happened next, only history recorded, confirming what they already knew from the start. The author's father landed his first job at NASA in 1986, on the same day this photo was taken, which also happened to be his birthday. The image of a young man at the start of a career at the space agency carries all the excitement of an era when reaching for the stars was the biggest dream of all.